Today we are building and installing this Frontrunner roof rack on our Cayenne Turbo S. I'm Justin.
And I am Aaron.
And before we go too much further, please subscribe for more great content like this. So today we are going to install this rack on our Cayenne Turbo S.
It's a lot of pieces.
It is a lot of pieces. Now, Aaron missed the, I don't know hardest part of it, but the longest part of it. Dad and I actually put this together, and we'll cut this in right now, hopefully with some funny music. Our producer has taste.
Yeah, a lot of pieces. I wouldn't say I missed that at all.
Well, today we're going to be have you been to the gym doing overhead stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, we're going to be lifting this up quite a bit today because we're going to mount it on this car. Now, this rack actually mounts to the roof rails. And now, before we go too much further, I do want to talk about a product that I discovered during the course of doing this project or getting ready for it. This ceramic trim coat by Cerakote is a great product. So these roof rails that are on this are the original rails. They're factory. They spent 17 years driving around on the road and getting rail abused.
They looked real bad when we got this thing.
They look pretty bad. And how do they look now?
They look great.
Yeah, so all I did with this was clean this off and then use these trim coat wipes, and it really brought them back in a way that looked fantastic. So wanted to mention this. We will link to it down below. Super easy product to use, not paid. I just love it. I think it's awesome. As a guy who drives a lot of old crappy cars, it's great to have this kind of stuff on your shelf, and that's exactly what I found here.
All right, so which one of these Mesa parts back here are we gonna start with?
All right, so we're actually not gonna start with any of these. We laid these out like we did for the other one. I do wanna talk about this Frontrunner kit for mounting. So here's one of the things that I really like about this Frontrunner experience. It comes with all the stuff you need. When we put the rack together itself, it actually came with Allen wrenches. Now, it came with the old school IKEA L-style Allen wrenches, but this kit, because you're gonna have hands over your head, actually comes with T-handle, ball end Allen wrenches.
Very nice.
I mean, these are real tools that came with this, and they're marked, certainly. I'll do the thing that all the web people do, right? It's marked, so you can see what it is, but really, you've got everything you need to assemble this right here. So we're gonna actually start by getting the rack itself up to find our mounting points on it. So let's grab that rack and let's get it over the truck. Okay, so our next step now, this is obviously our front bottom. We're gonna take this and we're gonna take it on the truck here.
No, we're just gonna hold it over the truck like a
Yep.
halo?
We're gonna hold it like a halo, okay?
So obviously, you're not gonna be doing this
No, you're
with
gonna need
one
a friend.
person. You're gonna need a friend.
This thing is a little
Oh, that's
heavy.
pretty cumbersome when you
Yeah, when you get it this high.
the top of it like
Okay,
that, so
so
you gotta be careful.
you can set it down gently so we can kind of see where we want it to be, and I think we actually nailed it first time. So now what we're doing is we're seeing if it's in the right spot we want it on the truck, and I think that's fairly well centered on the rails. Aaron, what do you think? Like front to back, is that about where we want it? I think that's just about right.
Well, yeah, I mean, the further you go forward, the longer you have to mount.
So we are going to be able to tweak this a little bit. All we're looking for is I think we want to use this rail and this rail to mount our feet on. And I think that fits about right. I think that's about where we need it. And we will have room to adjust it back and forth once it's on the rail itself to fine tune it. But I think we've discovered what we need. Let's take this thing off of here. So this is the other version of mounting. So these mount into the channels on the roof. Now, the reason I know that this is modular and you can order individual pieces is because shortly after we put this wheel and tire on here, I drove the truck that I had been driving every day for the weeks up under the carport at the office. I've been driving it for weeks without a spare tire on it, and I caught the spare on the carport and tore up a couple of these rails where it's mounted. Now, the great thing is it is modular, so it was an easy fix. It sent me a couple feet. We got it good to go. So I'm not saying don't be careful, but if you're not as careful as I am, you got spares. All right, so let's take it off now and get these feet installed. Oh, you all right?
Yep, I'm good.
So here are all of our components, and what's gonna happen, more or less, is we're gonna mount these on the bottom of the rack, and then we're gonna mount these this way. And that's gonna hold that rack on there. So first step, mount these on the bottom of the rack.
All right, so we've got a lot of parts here. I'm assuming we're gonna start with these.
Yeah, those are gonna be mounted to the bottom of this, but what we did now was figure out where we're gonna put it. And the way this works is more or less, you see how it goes this way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so it's gonna go around this and bolt up there. Right, so there's different options here. So we're gonna get to that. We'll look at the instructions, or actually you can look at the instructions. I'll get these mounted on here and away we go.
Okay.
This is an interesting engineering thing. These guys really have thought of a lot of stuff. First we start with our bolt. We put our bolt in here because we decided this is the one we're gonna use. Then we're gonna put our other bolt in here and just slide it in. See, that's how it's designed. So we have lots of adjustment.
Yeah.
Then we put on our mounting part.
Mounting bracket.
Mounting bracket. Sorry, my English not so good today. And
Put those doohickeys on it.
these thingamabobbers, and then we do a nylock nut and a flat washer. And Aaron, what size are these? Grab our favorite toolkit. Another plug here. So this is our Craftsman portable toolkit. We bought this a long time ago, and I love this thing. It's got everything we need in it. So you're gonna need a 13 for this tightening process. And you don't want to tighten them all the way up. You just want to get them on there because we need the flexibility here. There, and now we're connected on there, and we'll do that 3 more times, and we'll check back in with it when we're done. Now, surprisingly, we didn't manage to put one on backwards the first time, so that's great. But this is what it's supposed to look like. Now we've got to get it back on the truck and get it leveled out. So let's go back to the instructions and see what our next step is, and then we'll get this thing on top of the truck. Here are the grips, okay? So here's how this works. It's a 2-part process. You have the inside and the outside of the grip, and we're gonna get that attached to the foot so that we can put this on here. So this is what it looks like. And they have different options here if your rails are different size. And then once it's all done, we have a trim piece that goes on it, and it looks all fancy thusly. So this is basically what you're going for and how you're gonna connect this to the roof rail, with this being the outside, and then here is the rail. Our mics actually went out during this part, so if it's not exactly what you're seeing, I do apologize. However, it's pretty straightforward. You put the clamps onto the feet of the rack that you've already put on the rack. There are a couple of tricky steps to this. One is there is a spring nut you have to put in the little square on the inside. That spring nut isn't marked in the instructions, but it is an important part of that process.
Once you get that spring nut in there, then you take your bolt through your washer, through your brackets, into that spring nut, and just hand tighten that, really. You want to leave plenty of play in there so that you can just set that rack right on top of your roof rails that are already there.
Right. Once it's all assembled, you're going to put it on top of the truck, and away we go. Now comes the fiddly part of making sure it's even. Aaron, how does it look to you?
It looks pretty good, although it does look like it's a little bit more on that side on the right than the left. So I think we need to move it over to the left.
Right, we left it loose on those feet so that we could do that. We've already tightened up the brackets a little bit, and so I'm just gonna...
You know, I think the brackets are in a good place.
No, what I'm saying is we've already tightened the bracket, but we can still move it that way. So what we're looking at, where should I measure from? I'll measure from...
Well, wherever you measure it from, just measure it by the same spot on the other side.
Of that bolt. Once you get it close enough, we're good to go.
All right, it's a toot tape measure job.
Right. So there's a combination of art and science to this. We got 2 tape measures out, but you may not know this. Tape measures can measure differently. Unless they're from the chain Chinese factory, the Bureau of Standards and Measures doesn't necessarily do it. So here's a fun tip. Always have 2 of the same tape measure if you want to use them for that. Now we've got it pretty well lined up.
Yep.
So our job now is to tighten up those bolts on the inside, and those were, if I recall, 13 millimeter, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what we do next. So now our next step is for Aaron to tighten up the feet that connect the brackets to the rack. We've already tightened the brackets up that connect the feet to the bracket. So now it's brackets to rack. So Aaron's gonna do that, and I'm gonna put on these nice little trim covers.
All right, so we've got it all on there. We've got our covers on, we've got it mounted, and so I think there's only really one more step, and that's just to give it the old-fashioned dad test.
Well, we're both dads, so I guess you better do it your closest.
Yep. That's not going anywhere. One of the great things about this rack is the finish out, and it looks great with the covers on the side and also these little finishing caps, these plastic caps that go on the nuts just to clean everything up. It's all black under there.
All right, so now it's just left for us to pick up our tools and what is happening over there?
We still got a lot of parts, man. We're not done yet.
We're absolutely done. So do you want to know what you have in your hands there?
What do we got here?
Okay, let me take some off because you seem to be having a hard time. So here we have some spacers. If the rack is not quite level, these would go in where your feet are. Ours turned out level-ish, so I'm pretty happy with how it turned out.
Okay.
And then what you have there are more wind deflectors, so we can, once we get this thing moving and do some testing, you'll see those are different sizes, and we have yet another different size already mounted on the rack. So we're going to be able to kind of fine-tune our rack a little bit.
Give it the right whistle.
Give it exactly the right amount of wind noise and cost us just enough gas to make it annoying. So pretty simple project altogether.
Okay.
Couple hours,
Yeah,
probably.
a couple hours? No, not bad at all.
I would say Dad and I putting it together took about an hour or so, maybe a little bit more. Putting the square itself together is a little fiddly at points, but you've got to kind of continue to tweak the square until you get it all together. We're getting this up here, probably another fiddly part with getting it in between.
Yeah, a little bit of measuring, but overall, I was really happy with the way that went on there.
Yeah, pretty straightforward. Couple of guys, couple of beers, couple of hours. You can get a Frontrunner rack on your truck. As always, thank you for watching. Subscribe for more great content like this.
Come back and see us next time.